lies exposed to the full fury of the tsunami. Students have just arrived in the Lapahoehoe schoolyard and are waiting for classes to start. Among them are Bunji Fujimoto and his two brothers. That day remains vivid in Bunji's memory.
I could see a wall of water coming in from out in the ocean. I compare it to filling up a cup of coffee. We just keep pouring, and once it hits the brim, it spills over, and that's what happened back here, up on the wall. It didn't stop at the wall, it just came over, spilled over, and we could see that we were in trouble. We had to run. We started running. When the wave started coming over, we started running up to higher ground to my left, where the school building was. Fortunately, we made it in time. A bunch of the other children didn't make it, the other students, mostly students in this area. My brother was down here, but we never found him. I always wonder what he would have turned out to be like later on. A boy 14 years old and just getting to his prime of life. You can't do anything about it. You can't do any more than just think and talk about it.
Bunji's brother was among the 25 who died at Lapahoehoe, mostly students and their teachers.
Almost all of the bayfront area was nearly totally destroyed. The businesses were ripped right off their foundations. Many of the structures were wooden and they were totally collapsed. The railway, which was built on wooden railway ties, the wooden ties were floated up by the water and the rails twisted into pretzels.
159 people died that day, 96 in Hilo alone. Over time, the city would rebuild, but this tragedy would mark a turning point. Those who lived in the shadow of tsunamis were determined to be better prepared for the next killer wave. Just 2 years later, in 1948, the U.S. government established the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center in Honolulu. Today, the center remains on alert around the clock, coordinating the efforts of dozens of Pacific Rim countries.
We try to get a warning out as quickly as possible, and we have to go to our resources to find out where the earthquake is and what its magnitude is. And then, given that information, we issue this warning to the various participants in the warning system in the Pacific.
Equipped with state-of-the-art satellite technology, seismic sensors, and a vast network of wave monitors, the Warning Center can track any major earthquake on the planet and determine whether a tsunami is on its way. Scientists know that an undersea earthquake or a volcanic eruption, anything that causes the sea floor to shift suddenly, can displace huge volumes of water. When this disruption reaches the surface, a series of waves spreads out. They can move as fast as 600 miles per hour. Unlike a normal wave caused by wind or tides, the energy of a tsunami is evenly distributed all the way to the ocean bottom. In deep water, there's barely a ripple at the surface. But as a tsunami wave approaches land, the seafloor rises, the energy is compressed, and the waves can be pushed up as high as 100 feet or more.
It's always a number of thousands of people that could possibly live or die depending upon our decision. Here in the Hawaiian Islands, for example, every few years we have, now that's interesting. We got an earthquake to deal with. It looks like it's a small local quake in the central part of Alaska.
The center detects 2 or 3 quakes every week. Most, like this one, present no threat of tsunami. But even when a tsunami alert is issued, not everyone will take it seriously.
When you go from one tsunami to the next tsunami, people don't even know what they are. So it's hard for them to even consider them a threat. First of all, you have to convince them that there is such a thing, and secondly, that it can cause destruction.
Even in Hawaii, with its tragic history of tsunamis, people can forget the lessons of the past. In 1960, 12 years after the warning center was established, a massive earthquake off the coast of Chile generates a tsunami that fans out across the Pacific. Hawaii lies directly in its path. Early on the evening of May 22nd, the warning center issues its prediction. A tsunami will hit Hilo sometime around midnight. But with midnight long past and only small waves washing ashore, many ignore the alert and return to the downtown bayfront. A few even gather at the Suisan fish market to watch the waves come in. The 35-foot wall of water strikes like a bomb. Once again, Hilo is brought to its knees, with $30 million in damage and 61 dead. This wave will change Hilo forever.
Today, if you look at downtown Hilo, you see the highway along the bayfront, which used to be the railway before the tsunamis. You see a big expanse of green parkland, soccer fields, places where people picnic and play ball. All of that was homes and businesses, very, very heavily populated before the tsunamis. If you go there today, you can see the old roads which go in, driveways, all leading to nothing. They see that area and think what wonderful urban planning we have in Hilo to have all this parkland. That's planning thanks to Mother Nature and at great expense to the city of Hilo, both in terms of property and loss of life. The tsunamis have been rare events. There has not been a destructive Pacific-wide tsunami in over 30 years. But if you look at the number of tsunami events over the last century, there's been on the average 1 destructive tsunami every 7 years. So in many ways you could say that we're long overdue for the next tsunami.
Walter Dudley is not the only scientist who's worried about the next one. In the Seattle office of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Dr. Eddie Bernard is spearheading efforts to alert the public to the dangers of tsunamis.
Most certainly they're killers. If you look at the history of the United States since World War II, more people have died from tsunamis than from earthquakes in our country. It's one of the few natural disasters that has such broad impact. Most natural disasters are very localized. An earthquake, although maybe several hundreds of miles, doesn't affect anything outside of that hundreds of miles areas. But if you add up the dimensions of the Pacific Rim shorelines, it's on the order of 100,000 miles. So one earthquake, properly placed, can affect the coastlines thousands of miles away.
In Japan, however, the greatest tsunami threat comes from earthquakes generated not thousands of miles away, but much closer to home. This island nation lies on top of one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. The Japanese know that the sea's bounty is often matched by its wrath. In 1896, an offshore quake sent 100-foot waves crashing into villages on the Sanriku coast. The next morning, local fishermen returning to shore were stunned. A few miles out at sea, they had not even noticed the tsunami passing under their boats. Now they found their homes destroyed, their families decimated. more than 22,000 had drowned. Four decades later, it happened again.
1,500 vessels were swept ashore by the wall of water, and many in their crews drowned. Government aid is being rushed, but it will be a long time before this stricken region can be restored in the land of the rising sun.
The Japanese are no strangers to tsunamis.